Hello, good day, no? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening para tanan mag-greet depende kung ano oras yun ni Malantaw. Now, so let us proceed with week 2 discussions, no? These are the topics that we are going to discuss: the Java keywords, the identifiers, data types, variables, constant, and casting. So what are Java keywords? So Java keywords are words in Java that are reserved for specific uses. Now, kumbaga, this cannot be used as your variables. Kay man keywords nila sila eh. Kumbaga, reserved na sila for Java. So these are the example of Java keywords. We have abstract, case, const, double, finally, if, continue, else, so on and so forth. Well, anyway, yara na sa inyo ang module. But again, these cannot be used as your identifiers or variables. Okay? Now, so next, what is identifiers? So identifiers are user-defined names for methods, variables, constant, and classes. So these are the steps or rules on how to create or how to define an identifier. Number one, the first character of your identifier should start with a letter of the alphabet. Okay? And underscore or a dollar sign. After that, the identifier can be composed of alphanumeric characters and underscore. So like for example, no, um, we have, let's say, name. Yan. So identifier. Or let's say age. Yan. These are identifier, or let's say pwede ka kabutang number 2 if you have multiple ages, no? Let's say age 3, name 1, name 2, name 3, and so on. Let's say we have address. Okay? Let's say may number 2 mo na siya, number 1, whatsoever. Okay. Now, next is um, identifiers that are descriptive for their purpose. So like for example, if yung objective mo for that variable is para sa last name, therefore give it a name na last name. If para sa age, like for age, kung address, kung gusto mo medyo specific pagid yung address, let's say we have a lot number, block number, street, city, province, no? And kung ano pa dira, zip postal code. So, mas mayo nga mag-create ka sang isa ka variable or identifier. Kumbaga, ang purpose niya amo nang name niya. Okay? So, an identifier cannot have spaces. So, take note of that. So, like for example, if we have an identifier na last name, so hindi pwede nga may space then name. Now, if you want to put a separation with these words, so again, we have an underscore. Allowed tayo mag-use underscore. Kung gusto mo, i-underscore mo siya para magiging one word siya. Okay, Clara? So, any identifier that composed with multiple words, you can separate them by using underscores. Okay? Or let's say pwede man gani nga tingbon mo na lang siya eh. Ang obrahon mo na lang para ma-separate mong word mismo is i-capitalize mo yung first letter ng word. Like for example, um, yung last name mismo, i-capitalize ta. L, then yung capital N. Yan. Pwede man last name with small letter N. Capital L, pero small letter N. No, well, it's up to you. No, as long as wala lang siya underscore and it cannot start a number. let's say dire siya, so hindi siya pwede, invalid na siya. Okay, so dapat let's ara sa katapusan, no, ang number. So again, it cannot an identifier cannot start with a number. Okay? And so siya. So in the example above, the plus, dash, and an apostrophe, and an ampersand characters are not alphanumeric characters. So alphanumeric characters consist of number 0 to 9 and the letter A to Z, as well as the small letter A to Z. Okay? So next we have variables. So variables are the names you give to the computer memory location which are used to store values in the computer. So for example, assume you want to store two values, 10 and 20 in your program, and that later stage you want to use two values. So let's say how you will do it, and here's the following three steps. Now, first, create variable with appropriate thing. So example, our objective is to create a variable that can hold um, a name or a first name. So therefore, pangalan to siya first name. Okay. Then, store your value in those two variables. So like, so for example, again, ang example ka lang guys, isa lang ka variable ang sari sa module ta gina-instructionan niya ta na mag-assign value sa duwa ka variables. For sa aton dire para at least maintindihan nyo. So let's say, double quote, Julius. Double quote. Okay? Now, to retrieve and use the stored values from the variable, later on in our actual programming or succeeding topics, we will discuss that on how to retrieve the value of your first name, which is in this case, in our example is Julius. Okay, clear guys? Let's say for example, yung objective ng program mo is to store employee information. So therefore, you have an example of variable na. We have first name ng employee, last name ng employee, middle initial or middle name niya, ng age niya, ano pa, damo, may status niya, civil status, no? I mean, marital status, individual, the same malala sila. Ano pa, address niya. So damo guys. So those are an example of variable. Depende sa objective ng program or kung ano ang gusto mong obrahon na program. Okay? Now, next is we have data types. So Java has two sets of data types. We have primitive and reference or non-primitive. So these are the example of primitive data types. Now we have byte, short, int, long, float, and double. Per bytes, as example, we have 1. So it can only range from 0 to 255. Okay? And the short is medyo dako-dako lang gawa sa aton nga bytes. Now anyway, yung difference man lang nila yung byte. If you want to hold that variable, medyo gamay lang a value, therefore use bytes. Now, if you want to use that variable, medyo dako-dako lang sa byte, therefore use short. Okay? And we have also int. So this means this is an integer variable data type. Example, we have 167. It can only hold from negative 32,768 up to 32,000 or positive 32,767. And we have long. No? So for if you want to define that variable as long, make use of the letter L para ma-identify siya ng program nyo or JVM nyo nga long na siya. If wala ni siya, ang L, i-identify na siya or i-treat sa sang Java nyo as integer. So it can hold up from 2 billion ata. Ano eh? No? Negative 2 billion up to positive 2 billion. And also we have float and double. Float and double, guys, these are kumbaga real numbers, no? It can hold real numbers. When we say, di ba, real numbers can hold decimal or fraction. Now, example, if you want to use float, 63.5, that make use of F is either letter capital F or small letter F para ma-identify sa sang inyong Java or program or JVM na float na ang gusto mo sa inang variable. Now, it can hold up to 6-digit precisions. So, 6 digits ha. While double, another example is 63.5, but this time hindi mo kinakailangan specify your F or D. As long as wala siya F, meaning your JVM will identify that as a double data type. Na. So, anong difference nila na float and double? Float is a 32-bit while the double is 64-bit. Meaning to say, kung gusto nyo a variable can hold large number, billions or ano na da, use doubles. If for float, since this is 6-digit precision, millions lang ata, no? Ano, therefore use float. So meaning to say, if you want to use float as your data type, medyo hindi amo na ka dako ang makuha niyang memory allocation. Meanwhile, yung double, siyempre ma-allocate din siya dako, no? Sa inyong memory. Okay? Now, these are the non-primitive data types. We have char, boolean, and a string. So, a character data type, so take note of this, dapat may single quote siya. Okay? Then, can hold a character or a number, no? As long as isa lang siya. While the boolean is only has two values, the true or false lang. Wala na iban, guys. Just true or false. When we say boolean, automatic true or false na siya. And when we say naman string, it enclosed by a double quote. Just like sa gi-create ko kanina, no? Last name, let's say kung anong last name mo, naka-double quote. First name mo, naka-double quote. If wala, if you define that variable as add that variable as string but wala double quote, guys, this will give us an error. Okay? Now, just like this, no, we have int long double float. If you define that variable as byte short int long float double, butangan mo double quote, this will give you an error. Okay? Kaya ang may double quote lang is the string. Okay, klaro? Now, so the char data type used for single characters. So the boolean is used for logical data types. So again in Java, guys, it has only two possible values, the true or false. Okay. Now the string data type is traditionally a sequence of characters. So ano na, mga addresses nyo, mga last name nyo, or ano pa, basta any variables or identifiers that can hold string literals. Kung say literals yung naka-include sa double quote. Okay? Now, so this will regard this progress check. Anyway, I will give this in portal.